Hello and welcome to another ship review. Today we will talk about Dramiel. This is Angel Cartel pirate frigate. This is the only pirate frigate that has no special combat bonuses. It only gets a bonus to warp speed and acceleration, which is fairly meaningless in the context of action warfare. But it's still fairly strong and flexible frigate. And it's also relatively cheap by pirate frigate standards. So if you wanna try one of ships in this class, Dramiel is quite decent. And in addition, people are not as afraid of it as Garmors, Worms, or Succubuses, so you will potentially get more fights as well. Now, in terms of popularity, Dramiel is quite often used. You will see this ship occasionally in faction warfare. It's quite far away from Garmor, but relative to everything else, people do use it quite often. And in terms of win rates, fairly competitive numbers, 77% for a ship that does not really interact that well with the current meta. I would say it's quite respectable. And also note that all of these numbers are before the recent buff. In June 2026, Dramiel also got a unique bonus to reloading speed. A bit of a weird one. I would say it will be fairly inconsequential because in frigate and destroyer PvP, you usually know what armor do you want to use before a fight starts, and it's quite rare that you need to reload mid-fight. But maybe we will see like 1 or 2 percentage point gain in win rates after that. Okay, profile and performance. So there are two main advantages of Dramiel. Number one is incredible control, and number two is flexibility in fits. So for control, you get a very good base speed, as it's an Angel Cartel frigate, and all Angel Cartel frigates have very good base speed and agility. And on top of it, you also get the choice to fit double webs if you go with a hull tank. But even with a single web, you will be able to escape most of the fights if you know what you're doing. And if they are unfavorable. The second good feature is flexibility. It's quite difficult for your opponents to predict what kind of specific fit you will be flying. This ship can anti-kite, brawl, or scrum kite with autocannons, which is the more popular style, or it can web kite with artillery. A web kiting fit is very similar to a web kiting artillery fighter, it's just much better. Now, if you look at the performance map, the most meaningful targets would be Navy destroyers and assault frigates. The key to these matchups is to know when to escape. As you can see, on average, they will be 50-50 fights, which is not that great since your ship will be significantly more expensive. So you will have to play it smart and know when to escape these fights, so essentially utilize this incredible control. And if you can do it, then I would say Dramiel actually has a pretty decent cost efficiency. It's not amazing, but by pirate frigate standards, it's pretty good. Okay, so let's look at the most popular feats next. Alright, so we probably have a million ways to fit a Dramiel. I will show you two feats that I consider the most optimized, one for autocannons and the other for artillery. Let's start with autocannons. This is the main feat. It uses double nano and medium shield extender as the main tank. The idea is you get similar control to ships with double webs thanks to your good base speed and double nanos. And then, since you use buffer tank, you can perm around your newt. So the idea is, by default, you want to brawl in newton range with hail, and if you can't straight up win the DPS race, generally you will be able to newt out your opponent. And once you newt out your opponent, this is another potential win condition. You either shut down control or DPS or both, and then you finish off the fight. If you fight against stronger brawlers, usually it's blaster brawlers like Comet or Navy Catalyst. In these cases, you switch to Scrum Kiting. So instead of Hail, you load Barrage and you fly around 8 kilometers. And if this fight is not going your way, then generally you can leave because your control is good enough. And against some larger targets with bad application, you can also brawl and try to mitigate with your good speed and agility at a tight orbit. So that's the general idea. Now there are a couple of modifications that or other options that I don't like, but I will mention them in case you want to try them. One idea is to swap one nano with Gyrostab and then downgrade your guns to 150mm autocannons. The issue is you lose some control and you also worsen your feat for Scrum Kiting because your DPS with 150mm autocannons at Scrum range will be significantly worse. But in some cases, you will get higher DPS at close range, so in some matchups it may be slightly better. Another alternative is to use armor tanking Dramiel. I really don't like it, so this would be like 200mm plate plus small ancillary rep and double webs here. Even though your control is probably close to what you get out of this feat, and DPS is also similar, the tank I think is not that great. I don't think you can even get to 7.4k with that feat. And in this case, well, you get same control, you get the same DPS, but you get the worse hit points. Why would you do that? I think it's slightly less optimal, but also potentially possible. Yeah, there is one really weird feat with double reps and a cap booster instead of MSC. I also don't like it because I feel like Dramiel is just not a ship for tanking, for face tanking essentially. With reps, it's a ship that tanks with control, not with pure rep power. So I think it just doesn't really work on this ship. But again, technically it's possible, you can try it. Okay, now let's go to artillery. You can scrum kite or web kite with artillery. I would say in the current meta, web kiting makes a bit more sense. But the feat is essentially the same. You just drop your scrum for something like a compact web, for a compact warp disruptor. And the rest is exactly the same. As you can see, it's very similar to artillery firetail, and it flies exactly like this. The difference is that a Dramiel is a bit better. Well, not a bit, significantly better. Because it gets better control with higher base speed than on a firetail. And you get better DPS because of ship bonuses. And you have significantly higher fall off. So even if you get caught by a kiter, it's much easier to deal with in Dramiel when in a firetail. But everything else, like style, piloting, engagement profiles, are all very, very similar. The biggest advantage of this fit is that you almost always have a guaranteed way out. Since your control is so good, it's almost impossible to hold you 1v1. So even though the numbers like DPS or tank may not look that impressive, it's actually really hard to lose this ship in 1v1 if you know what you're doing. So the win rate still will be very respectable. Okay, I hope you found it useful, and I will see you in the next ship review.